call the meeting to order for February 16th, 2021. Public input is a maximum of 30 minutes for the purpose of permitting people in the gallery or to send in questions to provide input shall be no longer than 30 minutes unless approved by a majority of council. Each speaker may provide respectful comment on any topic they deem appropriate and not necessarily on the topics of the agenda of the meeting. The public input opportunity is meant for input and questions and answers. Each speaker may not speak for longer than 2 minutes and may have a second opportunity if time permits. Each speaker must not be allowed to speak regarding a bylaw in respect to a public hearing has been held. And we are, do I need a resolution to move that, CAO?
To the end of the meeting?
Yes.
That's what council chooses to do.
Okay. Do I have a motion to move that to the end of the meeting?
So moved.
Move that.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Introduction of late items. Anne has one to add. Sorry, CAO.
Mayor Baker, I have an update on the COVID protocols in the office that I'd like to add to our agenda tonight.
Okay, and where would you like to add that to, CAO?
I can do it right now, or I can do it under staff reports, or I can do it at the end under new business. So maybe at the end under new business, since we have so many delegates tonight waiting for us.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Just remind me, just in case I may forget. Okay, approval of the agenda. So motion R20, no, pardon me. Yeah, the motion R21-30 for the agenda of the regular council meeting for February 4th be approved. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Minutes from the previous meeting, R21-31. Move the second, there's an omission from the minutes. Councillor Kirshner departed at 7:38 due to illness, pardon me. So that the minutes from the regular council meeting held on January 19th, 2021 be adopted as amended. And do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. And now we're moving on. So petition and delegations. We have the RCMP quarterly report. Corporal Chris Millen, detachment commander from the Sayward RCMP. Corporal McMillan, are you online?
Mayor Baker, I've just admitted him, so he should be here any moment.
He's there, but his mic
getting
is
his mic
muted.
on.
Excellent.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Excellent.
Oh, we can't see you
Uh-oh.
very well, but you're there.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, you're just dark. All your lights behind you. But go ahead, Constable, or pardon me, Corporal.
Thank you. First time I've done any of these types of meetings, so please bear with me. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I've met most of you. Some of you I have not met. Obviously, Corporal Chris McMillan. I started on the last day of May last year, and I'm yours for the next 3. I spent 10 years with the military before joining the RCMP, and I spent the last 15 with the RCMP. I grew up in Vancouver Island, up near Port Hardy, a little place called Bull Harbor. Some may recognize that name, some may not, because it doesn't exist anymore. And I also grew up in Ucluelet. So just a heads up that I'm a Vancouver Island boy, and I fought for the job to live in Sayward on Seaview. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if anybody's got questions, just stop me on the way through this. I'm quite casual and relaxed regarding this. So typically, and in past members of council, every 3 months or so, the RCMP will report to council and take some direction from council and explain to what we've been up to. My little bit here is that you have a great little community that has not a lot of police requirements. It's a very placid place, and I'm only talking about Sayward proper. It is something to be held or hold. Initially, I thought it was my 3-year camping trip in my little cabin on the view there, and my family and my friends are embracing this almost more than me because people are coming up there far too often. It is a pretty neat place, and I'm using my boat a lot. So before I imagine everybody present has the current report.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I imagine it's quite really it's more of a police report from October to December, and the accumulation of our year end is December 31st, and fiscally we run till March 30th or 31st. So listed are the, shall we say, the calls for service, village versus rural, and keep in mind, I think Sayward's population is in the 300 mark, and we patrol about 4,000 square kilometers, 4,700 square kilometers. So just short of Was, almost to Roberts Lake, almost to Gold River, and then to the end of Lockborough Inlet, up to Robson Bight and down to Sonora Island. Quite a vast area for 3 members. I get my questions are: does council want me to go read through the list of calls for service, or I can highlight a few that have come for concern?
For me, I think just highlighting a few would be sufficient. Does council agree?
Yes.
Yeah, just highlight a few.
Honestly, the highway in the 80 kilometer zone is my pet peeve, shall we say. We've got school bus kids out there. We've got people who walk or ride the road. So our concentration is actually the 30K zone in town. So I'm pretty grumpy about that. So people need to do the speed limit within town, particularly in front of the school. We concentrate our efforts out on the 80K zone. A lot of people come in hot when they're heading north or south based on the change of speed, because it does go from 90 to 80 and 100 to 80. So we spend a lot of our efforts out on the highway, unless provided or directed otherwise. Lots of, shall we call them, informative stops, reminding people that they're speeding out of town. COVID has put a huge challenge on our policing. Like, I prefer to be in the school a lot more. Honestly, we talk to people outside the post office, but unfortunately we're challenged by that. And our direction is try and reduce our interaction person to person as much as possible. So I'm having a bit of a tough go with that, but because I really enjoy personal policing. We only did 1 vessel patrol in the fall, and preceding the fall in the summertime, we were out a couple days a week, again, running from Sonora to Robson Bight towards Lockborough. In significant files last year was a grossly impaired, until proven by court, not there yet, sailboat operator who was just very intoxicated. We did have a sudden death within the confines of Sayward. I suspect, I haven't received the coroner's report yet, but I suspect it will be a overdose by drug. In the first 9 weeks, or not even 9 weeks, 7 weeks of this year, we had 2 bad fatals in January on the highway. We had one up near the Mount Cain turnoff, and then we had a really bad one late January, just at the top of the canyon as you're heading north. That was particularly violent and a very tough go. And of recently, we obviously had the homicide. It was in just outside of Sayward's boundaries, which was a challenge for just people in general, members. It was quite violent, and I can speak to that a bit, but unfortunately we don't hold that investigation. That's been taken over by Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime. I can only speak to really the press release that was provided to me. Moving forward, we're looking at conservation, working with conservation outside Salmon River, Maine, heading out towards Memeki. Cougar season's open right now, so is wolf season. We have very little boat traffic, and actually due to COVID last year, in talking to my marine partners, vessel traffic was down dramatically last year. Our pleasure vessel, sorry. Commercial traffic was still up there, but what I'm told from the past, and I used to come back and forth when I was with the Marine unit, vessel or pleasure traffic was down dramatically last year. So we particularly spend some efforts on enforcing the vessel statute or the Canadian Shipping Act on the water. But overall, it's been very quiet. Quite pleased with the fire department. They work very well with us. The ambulance station, EHS medical services are great. I'm not sure how much more I can add, and more than happy to take questions.
Thank you. Does anyone from council have any questions?
I just have one.
Go ahead.
Just around, you know, the opioid crisis that's going on, you know, in a general way, do you see any concern? You know, you mentioned one overdose here, but do you generally see any concern around that?
Ironically, the previous 7 years I spent with the Comox Valley Drug Unit, and I've got a lot of concerns regarding opioids. And many people who get caught up in the opioid crisis were initially prescribed them through the medical system, and then they kind of go, lack of a good term, off-road right or off-road left. Heroin doesn't exist anymore. It's now fentanyl, and it's a Chinese-made product that is coming in, and unfortunately, fentanyl is infiltrating methamphetamines, crack cocaine, and actually cocaine as a whole. We recently had some cocaine sample tested down here in the Comox Valley, and it was actually cocaine with fentanyl. So one drug is taking you down, the other drug is taking you up, which is unheard of. Concerns, 100%. The one drug you can't, in my opinion, really turn your life around once you've done it or taken it is a heroin or a fentanyl-based opioid. It's kind of like a rabbit hole. Once you go down it, you don't come out of it. I've seen people survive cocaine, meth, and cocaine, crack cocaine, but not a lot of good comes of a start into a opioid or fentanyl habit or dependence, shall we call it. Concern, yeah, huge. And when we had that sudden death, and it's still, I don't have the coroner's report to speak to that yet, but I suspect it was a fentanyl overdose, and that's just my inner police talk here, just saying that's what my spidey senses suggested. And once we get the coroner's report, we'll know more. But unfortunately, it's out there and it's everywhere. Saber not, shall we say, got off scot-free. But I guess my challenge is there are no good outcomes, or there are no safe opioids or fentanyl type products short of coming out of a pharmacy. Drug dealers don't really do, what's the word for it? They don't spend a lot of time on their accuracies for their drugs. They're looking at repeat hooking the customer, so they spend more, buy more. If that answers your question, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd just like to add, I'd encourage every council person and citizen, if they feel it fits them, to get an naloxone kit and carry it with them because of just this conversation here, just in case you're encountering someone in that circumstance.
Is Corporal, is there anything that we can do as a town or a village to help out in this epidemic?
Education. Some people don't want to listen. Some people don't listen well. Again, based on what we're seeing for your population and potentially one overdose in 9 months based on, and bear with me, is there 1,100 in the valley, somewhere in there? I think we're good shape, but it's really difficult to tell somebody who's opioid dependent that the supply is tainted. Suboxone, which is a replacement, shall we say, doesn't do well for you. It rots your teeth out. It's something a doctor will prescribe once you're addicted. I don't know what the answer is, sir. We can educate as much as possible. In my experience in policing and being a drug unit in the Comox Valley for 7+ years, the people who are affected by it aren't going to take a lot of direction or listen. But education, I think, is the biggest component.
Okay. Does anybody else on council have any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Councillor Kirchner.
Corporal, the one homicide that you had, I was just wondering the status of, like, was it a known hit or just somebody in custody, or does anybody have to worry?
No worry. That's initially why I didn't speak to the mayor. Because A, it was outside the boundaries of the town. B,
Yeah.
It was a one-time event and the public is not at risk.
Thank you very much.
And if I'm at fault, I probably should have communicated with the mayor a bit earlier on that one. But honestly, we were hair straight back for 3 days.
Yeah.
I've made an oops in my last 8-9 months. That was probably, I should have speak to the worship a bit earlier, but we went hard. And at the end of the day, Vancouver Island Major Crime has taken over. The press release is all I can speak to, unfortunately. There's a lot of mechanics behind that one working, and trust me, they are working, and there's a lot of bodies involved. It is, how we say, I didn't expect it in Sayward, sorry. I was like, huh, pardon? Not in Sayward, please.
Yeah, no, there was no apology necessary. The concern just was whether or not we had any public safety issue would have arose from it. But thank you very much for taking the time tonight, Corporal. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Moving forward, I will work on the lighting conditions because I know Ann told me it was the 16th, but I put it in my planner as the 18th. So I'm sitting in Comox right now, driving back as soon as we're over this meeting. But again, this is the first time I've done it, and I realize the lighting issues next time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see we have a question.
Oh.
Somebody has their hand up. I can't see whom.
Councillor Craig.
Sorry, Councillor Craig.
Yeah.
Councillor Craig, go ahead. No? Okay. Thank you very much for joining us, Corporal. Drive safe.
Sorry, Corporal, are you still with me?
Oh, you're back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Craig, go ahead.
So I have a couple of questions here. I see that under your check stop program, you had one notation there, and under your impaired operation of the motor vehicle, you have 4 notations. So just so I can be clear on this, the counter stop program captured 1, and just driving behind people captured 4. Is that a correct statement?
The check stop, roadblock, 2 files. We did 1 in the valley, 1 outside, correct. And then, sorry, impaired, 4 calls. So keep in mind, these files are carded as received, right? So we would get a report of 4 impaireds operating, bear with me here, impaired motor vehicle act, 4 files. So we got 4 calls for service regarding somebody who may be impaired.
I see.
And then the check stops, if you go up, we conducted a couple check stops, and then I got heat from doing them from management, actually, just based on the COVID. We did 2 check stops, and ironically, we did 2 check stops, and we picked off, lack of a good term, 2 prohibited drivers in the Sayward Valley. People who are not allowed to be driving based on the report.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then if you just go down to the bottom section there where it says theft, you had three incidences of theft. Are we talking about, because it's not specific there, are we talking about theft from, say, somebody's garage, or theft of a motor vehicle, or theft of tools, theft of a break-in?
And I could break them down for you, but I believe there was a pump stolen from the fish hatchery out on Santa Main. I believe one was something from the docks down at the marina. And I don't recall the third one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all my questions there, my friend. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us. Take care and drive safe.
Will do. And I just want to encourage, please stop by the office. I'd love to talk. And I know we have challenges right now with COVID, but the door is open. If it's unlocked, means we're there, and we're very happy to talk to the public or members of council anytime.
Appreciate that.
All right,
Thanks.
Thanks, Sergeant.
All right,
Take
bye-bye.
care.
Thank you.
Okay, recommended resolutions. That the presentation by Corporal Chris McMillan, RCMP detachment, be received. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
I'll
I'll
second
second
it.
it.
discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. On to B, Western Forest Products, Sustainable Forest Management Program. And who do we have on with us from Western Forest?
Good evening, Mayor Baker. Jack Reynolds here. And I believe we have Stuart Glenn, John Deal, and Kindry Mercer with us tonight.
Perfect. Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. The floor is yours.
Excellent. So a quick introduction. Thank you very much for having us. This presentation is a result of our meeting, Mayor Baker, last month, where we learned that there was a desire to learn more about the management of forests in the Sayward Valley area. So presenting tonight, Stuart Glenn, he's our Director of Forest Inventory and Stewardship. He's a professional forester and has been with Western for 22 years. Joining him will be John Deal, who is our Manager of Forest Stewardship and Wildlife. John is a registered professional forester as well as a professional biologist. 29 years of experience in the BC forest industry, the last 14 of which have been with Western. And it's worth pointing out that John was a resident of the Sayward Valley for 8 years back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then listening in, Kindry Mercer, she is our Manager of Regional Initiatives and a good contact or liaison with deals with a lot of our relationships with communities and villages such as yourself. So I'll turn it over to John and Stuart to talk about Western Stewardship and Conservation Plan, which covers subjects such as old growth, wildlife, and how we manage biodiversity. So I'll turn it over to those two.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jack, and thank you, Mayor Baker and the council for having us, like Jack mentioned. I will share my screen and just confirm that we can all see the screen.
Yes.
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 Good. Okay, well, thank you very much. Just making sure this is working. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much for having us. Really, appreciate the opportunity to chat about forestry. We always enjoy chatting about forestry, and so I'm very happy to be here. For the presentation today, really, I would say it's broken down into 4 main sections. It'll take about 15 minutes, and then that'll give us a good chance for questions, discussion as well at the end. So it's broken down to 4 key pieces. So the first piece we want to put some information in is like, what's the context of the coastal forest? So I always feel like anytime we're speaking about any particular area of the forest, so let's say, getting some feedback, TFL 39, like Mid-Island, what is the context of that portion of the forest? So if we look at the overall context of the forest, the BC coast, and this is based on Ministry of Forest data that we've looked through, is 46% of the coastal forest is protected, 29% is non-harvestable, leaving 25% being the timber harvesting land base. That's the portion of the forest that we picture as part of, like, you know, we think about the coastal forest industry today, what the coastal supply chain looks like, growing trees, domestic manufacturing, and so on. That's based on 25% of the coastal forest. And you can see in the bullets what makes up the protected portion and the non-harvestable portion. So overall context, 75% of the coastal forest is protected or non-harvestable. As part of that, you know, a lot of discussion lately around old growth. And so here's just, you know, two charts, like a bar graph. On the left, you can see there's the 25%. That's the timber harvesting land base. The bar chart there on the right, 75%, that's that non-harvestable protected portion of the land base. And you can see from the colors, early being like the light color through to like the darker color being old growth. So you can see the majority of the old growth is in the non-harvestable and protected portion of the land base. In total, there's 4.6 million hectares of old growth. That's forest greater than 250 years old on the BC coast. And if we try and picture, what does that look like? What does 4.6 million hectares look like? That's 1.5 Vancouver Islands. So that's the current scope, extent of old growth in coastal British Columbia currently. And you can see there is a portion of old growth in the timber harvesting land base. That's the left column. And that would be, you know, the piece we'll speak to next as far as our management plans and so on and how that relates. I'm going to put this one in as well because this one's very interesting. Now, I would say like the forest never stops growing. So what the forest looks like today will always be different than what the forest looks like in the future. The forest is always changing through time. And maybe this almost to a certain degree ties into like how we feel as foresters or how we like judge our age as foresters, because we like the forest never stops growing. So we tend to see our age in the trees that we're looking after and so on. So if you, there's the dark color at the top of the chart. So on the bottom is time, right? That's simply just moving through time. On the left is area. And so all this is doing is saying, if as the forest continues to grow into the future, and if we just forecast ahead 250 years, and that's in the absence of natural disturbance, so say fires or a pest outbreak or so on, but 250 years into the future, you can see the amount of old growth increases from what it is today to be the equivalent of 8 million hectares, or if we try to picture it visually, 2.6 Vancouver Islands. So as the forest grows through time, 250 years into the future, the amount of old growth continues to increase in coastal British Columbia. So those are the two slides I had on context. I'm going to hand it over to John, who's our biologist, and he's going to speak and go through our forest stewardship and conservation plan and just the practices. When we think about that 25% of the forest, which is the timber harvesting land base, what are the practices that relate to that portion of the forest and the stewardship and conservation?
Okay, thanks, Stuart. So just to start us off, I'm just going to give a really quick summary of the Mid-Island Forest. Now, TFL 37 Block 2, that's Mid-Island. It's comprised of about 128,000 hectares of productive forest. And then of that, there's about 46,000 hectares of productive old growth. When I say productive, that means that I'm taking out all the like alpine forest, like all the really poor growing sites, treat swamps, that all gets taken out with those numbers. So this is, like I say, productive forest. Now, there's also quite a history with old growth management areas. They were legally established back in 2005. And within these old growth management areas, there's 19,000 hectares roughly of productive forest. And then within that 19,000, 16,000 hectares is productive old growth. Now there's a little bit more of forest that's between 140 years old and 250 years old. And then there's some second growth. And then the second growth that's actually in the plan is ecologically defensible. So it may be an area that is very important for fish habitat or for elk or deer or goshawk. Those are the main ones where we tend to use, excuse me, second growth forest within an old growth management area. The other thing I'm going to talk about just really briefly is this CUSUM deferral area. So back on September 11th, government made their announcement on old growth. So part of that announcement was the 14 recommendations that you may have heard of. So there was 2 reports released that day and then one of those had the recommendations in them. The other two things that was announced that day, there was a special tree protection regulation announced. So this covers the biggest of the big trees. And then also they announced 9 deferral areas across the province. And one of these deferral areas is located just outside of Sayward. And it's a 2-year deferral, so it lasts until August 31st of 2022. The total size is 1,150 hectares. And then within that, there's 586 hectares of forest that's greater than 212 years old. So the order that accompanied the deferral area specified that it was the old growth within that deferral area that's essentially, I was going to say protected, but is deferred for 2 years. And so it gives 2 years of time basically to plan for what it's going to look like. So what we would expect to see is some OGMAs, additional old growth management areas being developed in there. And to be honest, right now, there's roughly about half of the old growth is already in old growth management areas within the CUSUM deferral area. And the other point I'll make as well is the area of old growth will actually increase over time, similar to what Stuart had actually said. So we have a couple things going on here. So one is the growth of the forest, which Stuart was talking about. And then the other piece to this as well is we expect to see more old growth being conserved for, say, the CUSUM deferral area, for example. Marble murrelet may also see a bit more old growth conserved as well. And marble murrelet is actually, it's a seabird. It's a species at risk, and it tends to use old forest for nesting in. Okay, Stuart, next slide, please. So Western has been a leader in collaboratively helping to develop a science-based approach for the management of our coastal forests. What this plan is, it's a cohesive, structured, multi-scale approach. It looks at functioning ecosystems now and into the future, focuses on old forest and forest structure. And there's also a fairly heavy reliance on science-based variable retention. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, a lot of research work. So there's 20 years of it. And some of this work, some of this research actually was carried out in the Mid-Island operation. And in 2009, the book that you see on the left was published. And this was published by 2 key people that were involved in the research. And it's roughly, just a little over 400 pages long, and it summarizes all the learnings from the research that's been carried out. And this is the basis for our wildlife and biodiversity program that I'm going to describe in just a second. Next slide, please, Stuart. Thanks. So there's 3 main components to this plan. And again, this is our wildlife and biodiversity plan. So at the coarsest scale of managing biodiversity is you want to maintain a full range of ecosystems. The focus of our program is on rare ecosystems. At the second level, we're maintaining habitat structure and also forest or habitat types and forest structures. So this links back to the variable retention. And I'll describe this in just a second. But part of this is having old growth reserves on the landscape. And right now these are coming in the form of old growth management areas and any new wildlife habitat areas for species at risk that are legalized. We look at forest interior condition. So this is a measure of quality of the old growth forest. So some species like to be on the edge, for example, like we'll often find deer, for example, on the edge. But other species like brown creeper, which is a bird, likes to be farther inside that forest. And when we get inside the forest beyond 100 meters, that's what we call forest interior conditions. There is a bit of there is a change as well in lichens that grow in the forest in that zone. On the forest structure side, this is really where we get into the retention silvicultural system. This is, or for this, we have 50% of our harvest area in the company needs to be using what we call a retention silvicultural system. Now, you've probably seen this in and around Sayward. So it's designed, first off, to look different than a clear cut, but also what it does is it provides biological value to the species that's actually there. So there's all these groups, these patches of trees that are distributed throughout the cut block. And what you'll find is what these do is that they'll carry species for a long time. And also you'll retain habitat for species like, say, a chestnut-back chickadee that would not normally be nesting or in a clear cut because they need a standing dead tree or a hole even in a live tree to actually nest in. The final piece of this is big trees, and I'm going to show you a video here in just a second. But I mean, so far since 2016, when we first introduced our big tree policy, which then later became a standard, we've identified and protected over 300 trees, or 300 big trees throughout our company. So, and when I mentioned before about the special tree protection regulation, just to be clear, these are the bigger trees of the big trees that we're leaving. So as an example, any cedar that's over 300 centimeters in diameter will be leaving with a buffer, and the new government regulation is 385 centimeters. So there's a large group of trees that's captured as part of our standard. The last piece is sustaining forest dwelling species. These are the species at risk, like marble murrelet and goshawk that I mentioned previously. Species of significant concern. An example here would be deer, elk. Common species. Our main focus in the common species is first off keeping common species common, and we're focusing right now on forest birds. Okay, Stuart, next slide, please. Now you want to fire up the video? Looks like we don't have our sound. Okay, so I'll describe what you're seeing. So just outside of town, about 3 kilometers off the highway, Sea Branch, I believe, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a fairly large old growth management area. And within that old growth management area, there is this very tall tree. This is just a tiny bit shorter than the tallest Douglas fir tree known in BC. So this one's 94 meters tall, and the tallest one I believe was 94.2 or 94.3, something like that. And at the time of that tree was measured back in the 1990s, it actually had a dead top. So that tree now may have actually snapped its top. I'm not sure. Sorry, was there a question? No? Okay, sorry, it must have been feedback on my end. And then on the bottom of that slide, there's the YouTube link. Actually, you can go and have a look at it if you want to. Sorry, we couldn't get the sound working there. Okay, so my last slide. So stable communities require healthy, resilient forests into the future, and this includes growing forests that are adapted to climate change. We need both active management and some passive management when it comes to managing climate change. So when I say passive management, that's when we're talking about like these old growth reserves. So these areas are storing carbon, but on the other side, you also need areas that are actively taking up carbon, taking carbon out of that atmosphere and adding growth then to the tree. The reforestation is aligned with a changing climate. We have the improved tree growth as well, optimizes carbon sequestration. So that's the amount of carbon that is taken up by the tree. When we fertilize, that too optimizes carbon sequestration. The variable retention harvesting increases the structural complexity. So you have not only do you have more storage going on there, but you also have growth of the trees happening, particularly in the second growth when I say that. Not quite as much growth in the old growth. It tends to be a bit more slower, much slower growing. Okay, and then wood products as well are recognized as being key to the global climate change solution. So, and we're better than in BC. So forests they're a dynamic ecosystem, and they're directly influenced by a changing climate. Okay, Stuart, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, John. So really just, you know, almost like a wrap-up slide. It just is something I wanted to put in relative to, like, been having lots of conversations with folks lately on forestry and a lot of interest on forestry, a lot of interest in old growth, like just what we see in the media and so on. And really, in a lot of that, we see the language around like forest dependent communities. And as I think more and more about it, like, we're not forest dependent communities. We're forest fortunate communities. Like, not every community is fortunate to have a forest as, you know, as part of that community, like the community located right central to a forest. We do. And so I really just that thought around, like, we are forest fortunate communities, and like, and thinking through that, some key pieces I just wanted to highlight, and that is on the planning side, through the management plans, area-based tenures, we are looking out 250 years into the future. What does that forest look like through time? That becomes the basis for investments, for manufacturing, and so on. Like, it's all tied to that, even to the equipment complement that's used. The thing I wanted to highlight is coastal BC, like, we have the complete forestry life cycle, and there's just puts, you know, a suite of pictures in at the bottom. I wanted to start with Carey High, just, you know, from an education standpoint, like forestry professionalism, everything starts from education. And really, like, think about Campbell River. We got forestry in our elementary schools. There's the forestry program at Carey High. North Island College now has a number of programs. So anyway, a foundation of education. But then, like, Western itself, a seed orchard, and John mentioned about the climate for the future. So a seed orchard aligned to the future climate. Western has the nursery where we grow our seedlings for the reforestation program. You know, timberlands, growing healthy forests into the future. The whole supply chain, domestic manufacturing. You know, Western has the 6 sawmills, and really designed, specialized, I'd say optimized for the whole log pile, from small logs through to the large logs, and then you get into secondary manufacturing and so on. So we've got that complete forestry life cycle in coastal BC. And I just wanted to highlight on the healthy and resilient forests, and John touched on that piece. But as the climate changes, our trees can't move. We have to be doing very much forest management is all about, like, reforesting based on the climate of the future. And it's a key piece in communities having healthy, resilient forests into the future, active measures to mitigate against the changing climate. And just wanted to highlight too, this global leadership part, like British Columbia, we're 83% sustainable forest management certified. The world needs wood. There's no better building material out there than wood. And we just think about British Columbia, like we're a leader, we're a beacon to the world. This is what sustainable forest management can look like. And we're better for the world and its wood supply than British Columbia, and better than that, coastal British Columbia. Just wanted to highlight those few things. And just one last slide. And this is really just building on that conversation, like how we started our conversation. Like, we're forest fortunate communities. We can be proud of our forests. And like John went through all of our work, and there's a harvesting component to forestry, like wood products, but really the stewardship and conservation is the context of everything we do. And also really just to highlight, anytime there's forest management questions, like, we're always happy to share about forestry. That's, you know, it's part of what we do. We have a passion for forestry, so always feel open, and we are always more than happy to share. So really just wanted to leave with that. And really, we think about decision making about forestry, informed, factual, science-based is always a solid foundation to work from. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and we're happy for any questions, discussion.
Thank you very much. Does anybody from the council have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Sorry. Okay, Councillor Tinsley.
Oh, just is there a resource that the community can go to, or the public in general, that expresses all this educational information you've provided here? I think there's still a little bit of people just look at a forest and it's been logged and they just misunderstand what's going on behind it. Is there like a website or?
Yeah, thanks you, Councillor Tinsley. I mean, it's an excellent question, right? And because it's always the part, like, how do you share about forestry and enough information about forestry? And at the end of the day, like, forestry is actually extremely complex. It's not a simple area. I would say there's a few different ways. I think one of them that's really important, and one that we're that's important, particularly to us as Western, that would be like our community advisory groups. And there is a community advisory group based out of Mid-Island, where Jack's the TFL forester. And so that's one avenue, through the community advisory group. And I know they have a website and they publish information on that. Like Western on its website does have information as well. And then, we're always happy to as well to share information. I mean, there's lots of information about forestry out there. Lots of different people, share different information. So yeah, I think really to get into when there's detailed information and to get into like the true, the details of it and tied to the local forest and so on, like we're always happy to answer any specific questions there might be.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Craig.
Yeah, gentlemen, thanks for your presentation. A while back, I went to a forestry conference in Mission, BC. They gave me this delightful book that you see here, the Handbook of Best Management Practices for forest land in British Columbia, and we went through a whole bunch of seminars. So I'm just kind of going off memory here with that seminar. So please bear with me. If you could just touch base on this. Cut blocks are a funny thing. So if you get allocated a cut block and you don't use your entire cut block, I believe you have a 5-year period or whatnot to use your allocation of your cut block before it gets taken away. Is that correct? Or do I have my facts wrong on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And when we're speaking here about TFL 39 Block 2, right? So the forest that Western is managing, near Sayward, it's an area-based tenure. And so we very much manage it as an area-based tenure. That's where it gets into that long-term planning and so on. Part of that is like the harvesting of cut blocks. But those cut blocks, we have a cutting permit for a term. And, we would harvest under those cutting permits for the harvesting. As far as it being taken away, a cutting permit has a term, and we do our work inside the term of those cutting permits. But that may be for a different tenure type as well. That information you were looking at, to see exactly what that handbook was there that you mentioned.
Well, they gave it to everybody. There was the Handbook of Best Management Practices for Private Forest Land in British Columbia. There you go. That's it right there.
Yeah, and so so like the tenure there at Sayward would be like public land. It's not private land. So it's a public area based tenure. Okay. So which is different than a private tenure area as well.
Thank you.
I also have a couple more there. Is there a measurement for the riparian zones that you follow, like 10 square meters or 5 square meters or 20 feet, 30 feet? Is there an actual definition of a measurement that you guys follow?
Yeah, so there's a measurement depending on the stream classification. So stream classification goes from S1 to 4 up to S6, and depending on the stream class has a different riparian management zone and riparian reserve zone, depending on the stream class.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And just to add, those stream classifications are defined by BC's forest legislation there, Councillor Craig. So it's something that all forest companies operating on BC's public or crown land follow as part of our forest practices.
Beauty.
Thank you. I have a question for John. Earlier you mentioned CUSM, a 2-year deferral. I'm sorry, I must have missed part of that. What are you deferring for 2 years?
So this was part of the government announcement back on September 11th. So effective immediately on September 11th, old growth harvesting was deferred. So we couldn't fall another old growth tree for that 2-year period. And then within that window, there's going to be some planning happening, and more than likely there'll be increases to the amount of old growth management areas in the CUSUM area. That's what I'm expecting. We don't know exactly yet what government's doing. They're still trying to figure out the processes. And then there's also consultation that has to happen with communities and First Nations as well. So, and like I say, they're just figuring that process out right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
I
You're
Does-
welcome.
Sorry, does anybody else have a question?
have a question.
Sorry, Councillor Polson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is about the complexity of forest management nowadays. And with us being a forest fortunate community, and John, you talked about managing the bird population and preserving their habitat. Because we're so close to the forest, and because Sayward is so remote, usually the tourists that used to come here, and hopefully will come back again, are most interested in getting out into the forest and getting close to nature. And I'm just wondering if your company, or if you yourself as the stewardship and wildlife manager, if there's any plans for tours out into the forest to see these birds, or have you got any plans to develop some videos for viewing or teaching or that sort of thing? Because it's a huge interest to the tourists that come here from around the world. Last year I met a group of 20 people that were here in October, and they were strictly on a wildlife tour. And that meant they were from Germany, and they were looking for birds and fish and cougars and elk and raccoons and whatever there was. And they were all taking pictures. So it was so interesting. And, you know, the eagles really excited them, and the fish down at the wharf, of course. But I know it's a big draw for the people coming out to these remote areas.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Paulson. I guess, I mean, we don't have any direct plans for doing tours, but I mean, if there was an operator, we could suggest some places to go. We do have a lot of areas, you know, in the Sayward area where we do have bird counts going on every year. So we have a pretty good idea of what's like, you know, what's in different places, right, in terms of birds. But of course, that's going to vary by season as well. But, you know, it is interesting because we are seeing numbers growing all the time with people going out on wildlife tours. Even up in Port McNeill, there was recently an operator that was on the Lower Mainland but moved up there. And, you know, from what I hear through the grapevine, he's really busy actually with his personalized tours. And he takes people out to see whales. They go do birds. He does owl tours as well. So yeah, it is a really popular thing. Now we don't have a lot of owl transects or a lot of owl information actually within in there or within the Sayward area. But like I say, there's quite a bit of forest bird information that could be relied on.
Okay.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, very much for your presentation. We appreciate you being with us tonight. Is there any further comments from the delegation?
Actually, yeah, I have a couple more. I thought of a couple more questions. Can you just go over what stumpage fees are for everybody?
Yeah,
Sure.
perhaps I'll jump in. So Jack Reynolds here. Part of my role is to manage the planning aspect of forest activities at the Mid-Island operation on TFL 39. That includes stumpage management. So stumpage is a royalty paid to the government for the that allows us to utilize the forest resource, the timber resource on the landscape. It's an extremely complex equation that has a number of aspects that that change the rates that we pay for different types of timber. Very simply, it's the value of the timber less the operating costs to get that timber out, and the stumpage is, like I say, the royalty paid on the value of the timber to the government of BC, and that supports many of the other programs that the government has going on to support the public of the province. So that's it in a nutshell, but I could go on for hours about it.
No, that was sufficient. Yeah, it all came back to me after that. Appreciate that. You also said you have 6 mills. Is that in British Columbia? Is that on Vancouver Island? Or is it 5?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Councillor Craig. You have 6 facilities on Vancouver Island.
Is there one close to Sayward?
They are, I was, South Island. So Ladysmith, Chemainus, Port Alberni, that Nanaimo is where they're located.
I see. And just one final question, and then I'm done for the night for you. Are your mills equipped to handle the larger old growth trees, or are they more standardized mills that handle second growth trees?
So I think that's one of the neat conversations about the manufacturing facilities that are on Vancouver Island, and that is the facilities are there that handle the full profile. So right through from a 4-inch top through to the larger logs. Because the coastal forest, you've got a whole range of species and a whole range of log grades and a whole range of diameters. And so it's different than the interior, where it tends to be more like a hub and spoke, like there's a mill and everything comes into that one facility, where the coast is very much a lot of sorting, a lot of grading, getting the right logs collated together to go into the mill that can best utilize them and get the highest value from those logs. So a different model than the interior, and really specialized mills to each particular log type.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, Williams Lake was only equivalent, or the Williams Lake band was only geared for one specific type of dimension on their product. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. This is a question that you may have addressed in past, and I apologize if you have, but I'm relatively new to the area. There's a large Crown land lease on the west side of Sayward Road. I understand that there was a large windstorm a couple of years ago where there was a lot of tree fall, and I think Island Timberland did some harvesting there. Jack, you may recall we talked briefly about it when we had a meeting with yourself in January with the mayor. To me, that looks a little bit like a fire hazard. I wonder if it meets the standard of harvested lands. There's a lot of stumps. It's still a lot of overhang hanging out. It's quite unsightly. But in addition to that, I wondered about the other risks, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I'd like to get a sense of whether or not that does meet the standard for harvesting practices, or if it's sort of in a transition stage. It's important to us because we do plan to do some fire smart work this summer, and that seemed to me to be quite a risk. So are you familiar with the property or the site that I'm referring to?
Yeah, so excellent question, Anne. So the quick version is there is the land ownership throughout the Sayward Valley is very complex. There are small private landowners. There are larger private landowners such as Island Timberlands who own fairly large swaths of timber directly adjacent to the Sayward Valley, especially in the area you're talking about where the blowdown occurred, Frenchman Road area through to where your village water intake is. Upslope of that, you get into Crown timber that is part of TFL 39, which is managed by Western Forest Products. You are correct in saying that blowdown and that event causes increased amounts of dead wood that can increase fire risk. You're absolutely correct. Western recognized this, and to partially deal with that and partially extract some of the timber before it rotted, that's why we did some of the harvesting in the community watershed that we did and show you pictures of. But most of what the residents of Sayward are going to be seeing is the complex of private land owned down near the on the valley bottom. And so that's not something that Western is directly involved with, as it's not part of our tenure. However, I think if I recall correctly, I think I mentioned there was a program that is being sponsored by the government, and Kindry could help me out with this, that to specifically deal with fire hazards surrounding small communities. And there's some government funding available to assess those areas and to make a plan to deal with those areas, and whether it's on private land or Crown land. So that's something that I'm happy to provide more information if we can find it, and keep you guys up to speed as that develops. I understand it's a program that is going to be worked on over the next 12 months or so. And so I think that's something that easy for us to keep you guys plugged into what's going on there, and could be of great benefit to the village.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the update on that is we've been talking through the Strathcona Regional District to Sean Koopman, and he's the one who's coordinating fire prevention in the areas surrounding. So he's been talking to us and our foresters about the areas surrounding Sayward to try and identify areas that might be good for mitigation techniques. And I believe the next intake for that isn't until October. So we've got a little bit of time to look and see what makes the most sense.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone to join us. I appreciate that. You all have a good night. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know.
Okay, so recommended resolution that the presentation from Western Forest Products be received. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Opposed? None here. Motion carried. Can I also get who is remaining and going forward? Could you please use your virtual hands? That's easier for me to see. Sometimes it's difficult to see when your hand goes up. So please use your virtual hands.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and now we have the Sayward Primary Healthcare Clinic quarter report by Tracy Payne.
Mayor Baker, Tracy wasn't able to attend, but she's forwarded this report for council's review.
Okay. So council, you can review that on you already have reviewed it, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. So we recommended, resolution that the quarterly report from nurse practitioner Tracy Payne, the Sayward Primary Healthcare Clinic be received. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Opposed? None heard? Motion carried. Sayward Fire Department. Now, this is also attached, so I assume CAO, we don't have the fire chief or deputy chief on?
Correct. This is a monthly report that they've provided to us virtually in paper copy.
Thank you. Recommended resolution that the monthly report submitted by Paul Hebert from the Sayward Fire Department be received. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yeah, I just have one item here. It says that their SCBA tanks are no longer serviceable due to age. These will need to be replaced ASAP. For the CAO, was there a time limit for that ASAP requirement? Was ASAP meaning 1 month, 2 months, 3 months?
Through Mayor Baker to Councillor, I think the intent is to seek grant funding as soon as possible. That would be the determinant rather than any other time figure.
I see. Thank you.
Opposed? None heard. Motion carried. Correspondence. So we have A, B, and C. I think we're going to have to discuss these individually, are we not, CAO?
That's certainly the option that council has.
Would council like to discuss these individually, or do you want to receive the motion? Okay.
I'm okay with just receiving the whole motion.
Thank you. Correspondence from the British Columbia Yukon Command and the Royal Legion, from the Provincial Tree Planting Program and COVID-19 protocols, and the lymphedema awareness for March 6, 2021. Recommended that correspondence be received, and that the Village of Sayward do hereby proclaim March 6, 2021 as Lymphedema Awareness Day, and encourage all citizens to work together to promote and increase awareness to the health and well-being of those living with lymphedema is improved. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
Oh,
Thank you. Discussion?
I have a, oops,
Councillor Paulson?
sorry, I couldn't find my hand.
See under your arm.
Does the village website carry this proclamation for the Awareness Day? Will
CEO?
it be posted?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
Will this proclamation be posted on our website, on the village website?
Right, through the mayor to Councillor Paulson. If council wants to approve this resolution tonight, then we could put it on our website. We could also include it in our newsletter, which goes out at the end of the month. So a couple of options there. And of course, there's social media as well, that we have our Facebook page. So we would pursue all of those routes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Craig?
Yeah, just a question. Is this an annual motion that we're going to have to approve each year, or is this a one-time, this will forever be known as the specific date?
CAO?
Councillor Mayor Baker to Councillor Craig, this is dated for March 6, 2021. And we were approached by another community to consider this, who's approaching all local governments, I'm assuming. And so it would just be for this year, although they may, we may be receiving reach outs for this in future years as well. But I think the intent is to provide more awareness for the illness and the condition, and to promote, as they say, to raise the level of knowledge about lymphedema with the medical community and the public, so people are able to seek treatment if they find themselves in this situation without thinking to call their doctor and seek out some help. So that's really the intent, is to promote it this year. It may in fact come every year.
Excellent. I have no doubt this is a wonderful thing. I just wondered if it was an annual thing or a one-time deal.
Great. Thank you. So recommended. We're good. So that's been approved. Is that not correct?
Yes.
We did the motion? Okay, thank you. Council report?
Sorry, Mayor Baker.
Yes, CAO.
Sorry, I wanted to just go back. You'll see that there isn't a resolution for the BC Yukon Command of the Royal Canadian Legion, because in the past year, council had opted not to put an ad in this publication. So I didn't include a resolution towards that, but I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that in previous years, council has put an ad in this publication, but so it might be something you want to consider.
As far as I'm concerned, I think it's an important thing to support. Council, do you have any feedback on that?
I'm just
Councillor
wondering
Tinsley?
what kind of money are we looking at?
$275.
Thank you.
Councillor Tinsley?
I fully agree in supporting it, and it's very important. I think it's part of our COVID restart as well, hopefully.
Thank you. Councillor Kushner?
I agree with Councillor Tinsley.
Councillor Paulson?
And I also agree. I think it's a great idea to acknowledge the military service of local residents and also the people that are featured in the book.
Thank you. Councillor Craig?
I definitely will agree on the 275.
Thank you. So CAO, do we need a resolution to go forward on that?
We do, and we can put forward a resolution that says that let me just get my wording correct here. Actually, before we get to the actual resolution, I wanted to suggest that if council wanted to proceed with this, in previous years, it looks like what has been put in there is the mayor's business card. And of course, the mayor would have been well known within the military community, having been a long-serving member. But perhaps going forward, it might be an opportunity to promote some of the other military history of the area. And I was thinking we could possibly put in a photo of York Island or something relating to the Sayward Valley that promotes Sayward and also promotes the link to York Island, which was an important protective site during World War II. And so if council wanted to pursue some that maybe we could pursue something like that rather than we don't really have a mayor serving that's got a long-standing business or a military career. So we need to put something in there. That might be something council would like to consider.
I agree with that, CAO. Council?
So then going back to the resolution, we would have a resolution that council approve the request from the BC Yukon Command of the Royal Canadian Legion to include an ad in the upcoming 16th Annual Military Service Recognition Book.
Okay, do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
I'll
Sorry.
second.
Thank you. Discussion?
I think that's, sorry, I raised my hand here.
That's okay. I
All
heard
right, good enough. I think that's a wonderful idea on behalf of the CAO, but just to make clear that we're not going to go over the 275
Right.
budget we agreed upon. And if that's the case, then I think that's a fantastic idea. Absolutely wonderful.
Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Reports of committees. Anybody on council have a report from any of their committee meetings? No? Good, thank you. Mayor's report. Last, on Thursday, the North Island Mayor's with the BC Salmon Farm Association had a Zoom call with Minister Aaron O'Toole, the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, official opposition, to discuss what was happening with the decision that the Liberal government made regarding the closure of Discovery Farms. What the North Island mayors are asking or recommending and hoping to have happen, it's not a reversal of that decision because they know that's not going to be reversed. But what they are asking for is for the 4 to 5 year lifespan cycle to be allowed, so they don't have to call 10 million fish. Mr. O'Toole is going to try to put some pressure on the Liberal government to try to make some changes in that. As he understands, as all of us understand, likely there's going to be an election coming up in the spring. They don't have any Progressive Conservative candidate seats here on the island, so they're going to be jumping aboard of that and pushing that agenda. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. Okay, so unfinished business. We have something, where are we going to put that under new business? Sorry, no unfinished business. Staff report, 2020 COVID-19 expenses.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. This is basically a running total of the expenditures that council has approved to date on the COVID restart money that was generously provided by the province to the Village of Sayward. So you'll see that the items were listed that have been previously approved, and in addition to the monies that have already been approved, staff are recommending that funds from the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant be used for these expenditures, and that 5,660 be transferred from the COVID-19 reserve to offset the expenditures that council has approved. It's a, you know, the money when it comes in is put into a reserve account, and then as the expenditures are approved, it's taken out. And so this is an opportunity to continue to acquire the services or the items listed in relation to that previous direction from council. So that's the intent of this report. It's also a good recognition, you know, going back and going forward, because so much money comes into the community through grant funding, it's difficult, I think, for the general public to understand and to keep track of where that money goes. So this provides a really good, open, accountable, and accessible record of how the money's being spent. As you know, it's difficult to pull those numbers out of the financial plan. So this is a really good place for council and for the public to get a sense of where the money's been spent. Of course, we have reporting requirements as well, but that's a little bit less easy for people to get. So this is where we're at with that one.
Thank you. So we have a recommended resolution that council receive the 2020 COVID expense report for information and discussion, and that 5,660 be transferred from the COVID-19 reserves to offset expenditures related to COVID-19 from the 2020 fiscal year. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Second report is the Village of Sayward Audit Planning Report. CAO?
Thank you, and thank you to the CFO for her good work on that last report, calculating and keeping track of all these pennies, every penny. This report is basically for council's information. We, as you may or may not know, we have the auditors in town right now. They're here today and until the 18th. They're set up in the council chambers. And so this is an opportunity to provide them and to provide council as well with a sort of an enhanced degree of confidence in the financial plan and citizens that the financial statements of the Village of Sayward do represent an accurate statement. And it's an opportunity for a third party, of course, to look at the financial statements to ensure that we are within the standards of the public sector accounting standards. Chan, Noasad, and Boats are the auditors that are in town, and they are going to be looking at the risk of management in financial reporting, some revenue recognition, and also some deferred internet revenue. And I'm going to ask the CFO to explain what all of those things are, or to answer any detailed questions on the audit, because she, of course, is an accountant and very versed with this process. Thank you.
CFO?
Sorry, was there, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Was there specific questions for me to answer? I'm sorry.
Anybody? Nope. Nope. Okay. So recommended resolution that the council receive the Village of Sayward Audit Planning Report for information and discussion. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Opposed? Nothing heard. Motion carried. Staff report, council appointments and meetings scheduled for 2021. CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker, and thank you to our our staff at the front, Melissa, who compiled this work for you. This is basically per your request to have a detailed list of all of the council appointments and the meeting schedule over the next year. So this is for your reference for that purpose.
Thank you. So the council recommended resolution.
So moved.
Second.
There we go. Discussion? Opposed? Motion carried. D, staff report, Fire Smart Homeowner Rebate Program Coordinator.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to find it here. I'd like to thank Sean Koopman, who did the bulk of the work and the heavy lifting on this. This is a report that provides council with the information that we have a request for quotation for Fire Smart Homeowners Rebate Program, which will provide for some cleanup around the community, and it'll allow us to have a contractor lined up and ready to go should we receive the grant. And the grant is a little bit uncertain in terms of the cost, because it depends on it depends on the uptake, how many households agree to have this Fire Smart work done around their homes. So basically what it provides, well, you'll see in the staff report that there's a list of things. It includes the grant, should we get it, will provide for mail out to promote the Fire Smart 101 course, hire a consultant well, this will be done as part of our community plan review. There'll be a number of policies included in the community plan on Fire Smart work. It includes some training on fire trap avoidance and some safety work for about 10 members. There's a $500 Fire Smart rebate to about 30 households in the village to help them do this. And then there's curbside wood debris chipping, which is really helpful because, again, it's a way to remove the fire hazards by removing the fuel. And so it's a great program, and should we get the funding, the intent was to have council's approval to go forward with this, and then we'll be all set with a contractor. The Gold River and Tassus and Zavalis are all pursuing the same process in terms of getting council approval to do the work, and then have a contractor lined up. Should we get the grant, we'll be ready to go and tackle some of those problem properties that we know we were talking about earlier. Unfortunately, it isn't something that the Valley has taken up, which is a little bit unfortunate because, of course, fire in the Valley affects people in the village, and power outages in the Valley affect the village. So, yeah, the wood chipping services will be available to Valley residents as well. But this will be a great benefit to the village for sure.
Thank you. So recommended resolution that council receive the Fire Smart Homeowner Rebate Program Coordinator Report for information and discussion. And that council be advised of the outcome of the grant application and the upcoming work in the summer of 2021. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second, yep.
Discussion? Opposed?
Yeah, just want to.
Sorry, Councillor Craig?
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to say about the words, the curbside wood debris chipping. When Sean and I were talking about this program way back when, the consultant to review the Sayward official community plan, the entire Sayward Emergency Preparedness Committee at that time was already briefed on this. But Sean actually had this brainchild in his head, just wanted to let everybody who's ever going to watch this video know that curbside wood debris chipping was actually just something that he thought he could throw into the pot to make it a sweeter pot. That was his brainchild. He ran it by me, and I thought it was a bonza idea. So that came entirely, that one aspect came entirely from Mr. Koopman, and he should be congratulated for that.
Thank you. Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaws. There is none. And new business, CAO.
Thank you. Mayor, through the mayor to council, with the latest strain of the COVID virus, we have upped our protocols here in the office. We're being more firm with the numbers in the office. We'd like to request that council not come into the staff work area and that we provide you with anything that you've come to pick up. So anything in your mailbox, we'd like to hand it to you through the plexiglass window. It's important because partly, well, we've got the auditors here now and they're in and out of files. So we want to keep the numbers down. We want to minimize the risk. We want to be as diligent as we can. We don't want anybody in town to get sick. And so we would request that council please allow us to provide you with what you need rather than coming in to the workspace. And we'll be asking the public as well. We generally try and limit it to one person in the office. So we request your support for that so that we can maintain a really high standard of safety for staff in that area and the public and yourselves. So that is the COVID update for the new business.
So CAO, just to be clear, are we closing the mayor council office? Is that what you're requesting?
No, the administrative office there. So if council needs to meet, of course, it's possible to come in through the mayor's door. People have keys to that door, and that's an entrance way in. If you need to get into the office, it's there for you. What we're asking is that we're trying to limit numbers in the administrative part of the front desk where our staff sit. They're there all day, and you know, it would be easier if we could just retain that as a sort of a bit more sterilized. We do tend to sterilize that area every time somebody comes through. Today, when the auditors left, we cleaned the whole council chamber office, sterilized the chairs, the table, the door handles. And so we're just asking that you, that people limit, we're trying to limit the numbers coming into our area where staff are working all day. And that's the area that we're trying to keep a little bit with less traffic, the minimal amount of possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question period. Maximum 15 minutes. The purpose of the public question period is to permit people in the gallery to ask questions about issues discussed by council during the meeting. Speakers will be allowed to ask one question if time permits. After everyone who has had the opportunity to ask a question, speaker may allow a second question. For the record, they can state their name. CAO, do we have?
Thank you, Mayor. We have, the citizen had provided a letter and has since withdrawn the letter. I think that matter has been resolved for the moment.
Thank you. On 16, in camera, I need a motion that we need to go in camera. Okay, so I'm making a motion. We have to discuss one item. So I'd like to make a motion that we go in camera for a brief few minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion?
Under what section of the community charter are we going in camera today?
Staff.
So what section of the community charter?
What section is that, Councillor Craig? I'm sorry, I don't have the section in front of me.
Well, you know what?
Section?
We can, we have to close this meeting off. We could,
Yes.
we can look that section up and we can refer to that. I'm going to have to check. I don't know what it's about, but I can check the Local Government Act and the Community Charter right now.
All it's
and we can
regarding
report
is-
on that as we open up.
Okay. Thank you. So, recommended resolution that the regular council meeting for February 16th, 2021 be adjourned and we go into camera. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second? Thank you. Discussion? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. We'll just briefly go into camera. CFO, can you let me know when we're not recording?